Hello, everyone, welcome back to the World Conflict Monitor. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today we dive into a deeply unsettling development. Belarus on the edge. Military bases seized. Is Lukashenko finished? In exploring this tale, we will look at the exterior, meaning the strategic, diplomatic, and territorial front, the interior, meaning the internal dynamics, power struggles, security apparatus, elite circles, and domestic response, performance, how the regime is functioning under pressure, safety risks, vulnerabilities, threats, unique selling points, what gives Lukashenko or his regime any leverage or resilience, a sense of price, political cost, economic cost, human cost, and then a conclusion. Is Lukashenko finished or not? This is a speculative deep dive based on open source information and current trends. In the outer dimension, the exterior battlefield, we are witnessing a gradual but unmistakable shift in Belarus's strategic posture. Belarus already functioned as a staging ground for Russian forces in the war against Ukraine. Russia used its territory for logistics, troop transit, and basing, especially in the early 2022 thrust from the north. Over time, Belarus and Russia have deepened their security integration. In December 2024, the two countries signed a sweeping security treaty that integrated Belarus even more into Russia's sphere, placing Minsk under Russia's nuclear umbrella and tightening military coordination. Under that arrangement, Ukraine and Western analysts see Belarus as effectively a forward logistics base of Russia's Western military district, tactical, operational, and strategic levels all coordinated. Belarus resists sending its own forces directly into Ukraine, though it supports Russian operations covertly and with infrastructure and basing access. Yet this gives Moscow leverage over Lukashenko. In effect, Belarus has ceded a measure of military sovereignty. Lukashenko remains under persistent pressure. Russia expects Belarusian cooperation, deeper alignment, and even deployment of more advanced weapons systems, including potentially nuclear-capable assets. For example, the Orshnik missile system is expected to be deployed on Belarusian soil by late 2025. Meanwhile, NATO and neighboring states remain wary of aggressive posturing from Belarus, especially along the western border. Belarus has sought to deflect accusations of offensive intentions by relocating joint drills away from its western border. But the exterior picture also shows tension. Belarus is vulnerable to external intrusion by Ukraine, by opposition or partisan forces, to diplomatic pressure from the West, and to growing isolation. It is being squeezed between its external obligations to Moscow and the risks of being a frontline in conflict. Thus, the exterior arena is one of both dominance and fragility, dominance in strategic location and alliance with Russia, but fragility in terms of exposure, leverage, external pressure, and the possibility of base seizures or incursions. Turning inward to the interior, this is where the real drama plays out. The interior domain encompasses the security services, the military, elite networks, regime legitimacy, loyalty, social fault lines, and potential fractures. The interior is large and complex, so we treat it with greater weight. At the top, Lukashenko's regime has long relied on a personalized authoritarian hold, reinforced by a security state apparatus. The KGB, Belarus's state security service, the internal police, the presidential guard, local governors, and regional party networks. The loyalty of these institutions is critical. If they fracture, Lukashenko loses grip. In recent years, Belarus's authorities have aggressively suppressed dissent, arrested opposition figures, cracked down on independent media, and used trials for sabotage to deter internal unrest. For example, in October 2024, a court in Minsk handed sentences of up to 25 years to individuals accused of sabotage at a Russian military airfield. The Machalishchi air base near Minsk was attacked in 2023, by drones claimed by the Belarusian anti-regime group BIPOL. The formal acknowledgement from the regime came later, admitting the damage was minor, though this indicates that even Russian military assets in Belarus are not secure. Within the security forces, loyalty is always vulnerable to fractures. In 2020, during the large protests after Lukashenko claimed victory in a disputed election, there were moments of defection, police officers quitting, showing public sympathy for protesters, videos of security personnel discarding uniforms. But ultimately, the core leadership, especially heads of defense and internal security, remained loyal. A key interior pressure point is the military itself. Belarus has a relatively small professional army plus border troops, and its high command is closely integrated with Russia. This throws into question whether truly independent Belarusian military loyalty remains or whether command loyalty is bifurcated between allegiance to Minsk vs. Moscow. Some analysts argue that Belarus's forces have become almost an extension of Russia's. Another dimension is elites and patronage. Lukashenko must maintain rewards for the security apparatus, promotions, financial perks, control of economic assets, contracts, and personal loyalty. If Russia or internal challengers begin to offer alternate promise, loyalty might shift. The regime also uses coercion, arrest, secrecy, purge threats to keep elite loyalty in check. In the broader population, discontent has simmered for years. Protests in 2020 were met with brutal repression. The opposition led in exile by Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya remains influential abroad, symbolic internally, but Belarusian society is under heavy surveillance, censorship, and repression, meaning large-scale uprising is dangerous. Many Belarusians fear the consequences of mass mobilization. Also, the interior terrain includes sabotage, partisan operations, information warfare, defectors, and underground resistance. The attempted sabotage at military bases is evidence that internal actors are willing to challenge the security of the regime. Over time, more such attacks could undermine confidence, especially if the populace senses the regime is no longer impregnable. There is also internal legitimacy and narrative control. Lukashenko markets himself as a stabilizer, protector from Western interference, and guarantor of sovereignty, even though in practice sovereignty is constrained. If that narrative fails, if he cannot protect bases, cannot deliver stability, cannot provide normal economic conditions, his internal legitimacy erodes. In sum, the interior dimension is under stress. Key pillars remain loyal but are under strain. Sabotage signals cracks. The population is subdued but discontented. Elite networks may be under pressure from Russia's influence or internal fatigue. Performance: how is the regime performing under this pressure? Right now, Lukashenko is managing to maintain control, but with increasing difficulty. He continues to hold tightly on power, use repressive tools, deploy security to suppress dissent, and manage alliances. His regime is a combination of coercion, co-optation, patronage, and alliance with Russia. Operationally, Belarus still functions. The state continues the administration, security forces remain intact, borders are managed, infrastructure is controlled. But performance is showing signs of stress. Base security is compromised by sabotage, public legitimacy is low, external pressure is rising, Moscow's demands intensify, and the system may be overstrained. In the military, security front, integrated coordination with Russia has improved capability, but this also ties Belarus's performance to Moscow's success and burdens it with external expectations. Belarus is less of an independent actor and more of a constituent in the Russian war effort. In terms of resilience under crisis, the regime is adapting, shifting joint drills, repositioning symbolism, managing diplomatic overtures e.g., releasing prisoners for sanctions relief. But performance under escalating crises, e.g. attempted base seizures, remains untested at scale. Safety features, i.e., regime's protective measures and vulnerabilities, regime protective measures, security architecture, strong internal security, KGB, surveillance, purge capacity. Elite loyalty secured via patronage, repression, censorship, arrests, control over media, limiting civil society, external backing. Russia provides political, economic, and military cushion, intelligence and counterintelligence apparatus to root out conspiracies. Vulnerabilities, sabotage of military bases, which diminishes the perception of invulnerability, insider defection risk within security and military, economic hardship and the cost of sanctions undermining legitimacy. External pressure, Western sanctions, diplomatic isolation, military threat. Over-reliance on Russia, which can also be a liability. Information warfare, if opposition messaging breaks through, public morale could shift. Border exposure and external incursions, especially near Ukraine frontier. The safety net is strong but thinning. The regime can still counter many threats, but multiple pressures can accumulate to break parts of the net. Unique selling points. What gives Lukashenko or regime a measure of leverage or resilience? Strategic geography. Belarus is a critical land bridge between Russia and Europe that gives it strategic importance. Russia alliance, being a close partner of Moscow, provides military, economic, energy subsidies, geopolitical protection, covert neutrality narrative. Although Belarus supports Russia, Lukashenko can claim a facade of neutrality, which gives some diplomatic flexibility. Control over security apparatus. The regime still holds the levers of force and has deep institutional entrenchment. Ability to detain, censor, suppress opposition. Force is a blunt but effective tool. Use of political prisoners and pardons as diplomatic bargaining chips, e.g., releasing prisoners to ease sanctions. Psychological aura of fear and deterrence. Many resist challenging the regime openly for fear of consequences. Propaganda narrative, defending sovereignty, resisting foreign interference, stability vs chaos. These USB don't guarantee endurance, but they buy time, leverage, and options. Price the cost in multiple currencies. Political cost. Lukashenko's regime is increasingly reliant on Russian patronage, decreasing its sovereignty and independence. He is perceived more as a vassal than an autonomous ruler. Domestically, his legitimacy is weakening, public trust is minimal, economic cost, sanctions, disrupted trade, damaged investment, pressure on Belarus's economy. Belarus's dependence on Russia for energy and markets increases. Additionally, security operations and repairing damaged infrastructure, e.g., after sabotage, are costly. Human cost, repression, imprisonment, political violence, suppression of dissent, curtailment of freedoms, suffering by citizens. Also risk of casualties if conflict escalates. Security cost. Resources must be diverted to base security, guard forces, internal intelligence, counterinsurgency. The regime may be overstretched. Diplomatic cost. Isolation from Europe, sanctions, loss of legitimacy internationally. Lukashenko must juggle between Moscow's demands and Western pressure, limiting diplomatic room. Systemic risk. The cost of regime collapse or fracture includes civil disorder, power vacuum, intervention by other states or proxies. Thus the price is extremely high and rising. Conclusion: is Lukashenko finished? At present, Lukashenko is not finished. He holds the levers of power, commands the security apparatus, receives Russian backing, and maintains enough control to suppress large-scale revolt. He still has many cards, though diminishing ones. However, he is on thin ice. The seizure or sabotage of military bases, even partial or symbolic, is a potent signal that the regime's aura of invincibility is fraying. If further base seizures, defections, or internal system failures follow, the regime could enter a domino collapse. The margins are narrowing. Thus, if timely, coordinated internal opposition, elite defections, and external pressure converge, Lukashenko could face existential threat. If not, he may survive, but in a weaker, more constrained, more puppet-like posture. In short, Lukashenko is not finished yet, but unless he reverses these dynamics, the prospect of being finished is no longer hypothetical.